And it was super profitable for us. And the client loved it because so many people in their organization were like hating what they were doing because it wasn't efficient.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the High Level Spotlight Sessions, where we showcase awesome marketers doing incredible marketing. Today, I am joined by Brent Weaver from uGurus, which is super exciting. We've been friends for a long time. It's fun getting to catch up now. But Brent created uGurus, which helps digital agencies achieve freedom by mastering their businesses through training, coaching, and community support. Brent, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, Chase, great to be here.
I love in that description that I got from your website that the first thing it says you help digital agencies do is achieve freedom. And I think that's so refreshing, right? Because the messaging you hear right now from like coaches and when you hear the word guru is 7 figures, make tons of money, cars, Lambos, this and that. But that's not really what it's about, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So when I go out and talk with agency owners, and at this point we've worked with as clients over 1,500 agency owners. I've done informational interviews and hung out with agency owners in the probably close to 10,000 by this point, right? Of just people that have been exposed to our podcast or all that kind of stuff. When I ask them about like, what do you really want from your business? Usually it's some form of freedom. Like they want more money, but like, do they want like private jet Lambo money kind of stuff? Like, I mean, a lot of times most agency owners are actually kind of turned off by that. They really enjoy the work they do. They enjoy the clients they're working with. But maybe that money equation is off a couple of degrees, right? Maybe if they could 2x their income, that would be a huge change to their overall life and also the freedom they have in their business. I've met a lot of agency owners that are 7-figure agency owners, and they're slaves to the business, right? They don't have freedom. They don't have weekends. They don't have nights. They're always in fear of, a small downturn or losing that client or not getting those referrals or word of mouth, and then having to cover payroll, cut their own salary. And so we really focus on that idea of freedom through income, through time off, and through the impact that you're having on your clients and on those people around you.
I love there was a page on the site somewhere and it was like, this is success. And it's like a picture of you and your family. And it's like a picture of you on your bike. And to me, that just really resonated.
And for me, I mean, that's, this idea that you're going to find a business and like retire early. If that's like your goal, that's cool. I really love the work that we do. I've always loved when I was running my agency for 13 years. I love the clients. I loved meeting all the new businesses. I really enjoyed the work as long as I got to work with like fun clients and make good money doing it versus those pain in the what clients. And so we just try to focus more on that of like enjoying the process, enjoying what you're actually doing in your business, and then creating a business that you can step away from, whether that's at first like a week-long vacation, and then a 2-week-long vacation. A month-long is ultimately what we challenge our clients to, is being able to take off 1 month uninterrupted per year and have the business either maintain or grow in your absence. I think at that point, we really see that you have a business and not just a job.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So we're going to talk about being stuck with clients you hate versus getting clients you love in a minute. And so I'm excited for this call because I know the uGurus program is one of the most sort of buttoned up, proven ones I've seen. And you guys, everything from like training to like, here's the scripts and the materials and this and all the way through coaching and mentorship. So hopefully what I want to do is just pull pieces of that sort of the whole thing into this 15 or 20 minute conversation. So let's start at the beginning, right? A lot of our community members are just starting with their agency. They're contemplating this idea of, should I niche? And I think we both agree that you should. And assuming that's the case, how do you choose your niche? And then how do you find the right pond? Like, how do you find where the people in your niche are hanging out?
Yeah. So, should I pick a market or pick a niche, as you say? I think you can just look at the example of the doctor industry, medical industry, who gets paid more, the heart surgeon or the family practitioner. Now, not everybody wants to live the life of a heart surgeon where maybe the stakes are higher and they have to maybe go to more school, or they have to develop a higher level of expertise in order to build that practice. So the reality is, if you choose to niche down in a specific market, and expect to make a higher amount of money, you are going to need to kind of skill up for that market. You're going to have to get really clear on, who these people are, what are their top pains and problems, how does that line up with your service offering, what kind of solutions you're bringing to the market, and make sure that their service market fit. A lot of our clients, when they go into a market, they think they're going to do one thing. They think they're going to provide this market with leads or web design services or whatever. They get in there, they start talking to these people in the market, and they realize that the real problems maybe are something that they hadn't really ever thought of before, and they have to spend a lot of time, really learning and mastering that market and applying their skills in unique ways to get that market results. So sometimes there's a little bit of a lag between choosing a market and thinking, oh man, if I just crank out websites for restaurants, I'm going to be a millionaire, right? And the reality is they have very unique problems, right? If you're going to actually go into a market and build yourself as an expert, then, restaurants as an example, like, you better be darn good at helping restaurant owners book more reservations, fill up their slow nights, help them build marketing assets like email lists, and things like that, right? So it's not as easy as just building a website for a restaurant. Like, if you're really going to have a competitive advantage, you need to start speaking their language. You need to be able to get them that proven result.
But that's the rub, right? Once you go deep into a niche, you start figuring out those unique things that they need, and now you're a specialist, and you're much more attractive than the general jack of all trades agency that's also competing for their business.
Yeah, and people ask me the question all the time. They're like, well, what if I focus on one market, won't my clients feel like, aren't they going to be unhappy that I'm working with their competitors, right? We hear that a lot. And I say, look, do you think if you're in a meeting with a client, which agency would the client rather pick? The agency that has worked with over 200 restaurants in a market, has a proven framework for how to get that restaurant specific results that are tangible, quantifiable, and they're confident of their ability to do that? Or would they rather work with the agency that's built two websites for a restaurant, has no proven process, no proven frameworks, no idea how to get this restaurant owner a result, and they're really just guessing at potential solutions? And usually then the agency owners I'm talking to are like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? They want to work with, like, why wouldn't a client rather work with a company that has that proven edge in the marketplace? So I think that there's that component. One of the questions you asked was like how to kind of find our market. So we look at kind of three kind of broad-based buckets of things that you need to keep in mind. One, does the market have money, right? Do they have money? And also, do they spend money on the types of services that you offer? It's a lot easier to sell religion to believers than it is to sell religion to non-believers, right? So if you're going into a market and you're the first digital marketer, if you're the first web designer, if you look at the market in general and it's clear that nobody invests in their digital assets, right? Like, you being the first one to that market probably isn't a good thing. If you're researching a niche and you find a dozen other specialist agencies already focused on that niche, that's actually a really good thing, right? If you go and search on Google and you see a lot of advertisers, right? If you get pixeled by them and you see sophisticated Facebook marketing, I mean, these are all really good indicators that people are spending money, which is a good sign, right? If a client isn't, they have an agency relationship already, just wait 6 months and they'll probably be unhappy with that agency relationship at some point, right? So is there money? Do they spend money?
Because I said that's so interesting that you just said that, because we're working on this cold email outreach course, and the one tool that we mentioned, D7 Lead Finders, it actually tells you if it can detect pixels, and that goes back to what you're saying, right? It's an indicator that they're already spending money on ads, which makes them more likely to want to, use a marketing agency.
Right.
So that's a good point. Yeah.
Or even multiple agencies, right? Like we get a lot of our business through digital marketing. And I've personally hired probably a half a dozen different marketing firms to work with uGurus over the last 7 years. I've hired branding agencies. I've hired, ad agencies, marketing fulfillment companies. I mean, I've had retainers. I mean, right now I've got 3 different retainers with 3 different agencies at the same time. So even if a potential client in a market has an agency relationship, doesn't mean they can't have more. Like we have 3 different web agencies that we work with for various different types of projects, right? So if you
They
see money,
specialize in, right? They specialize in specific things.
exactly, right? So money is a big part of the equation. Another one is interest. So do you have an interest in that market? And I say interest, not passion. Interest is really important because I don't have an expectation that you have passion for like every type of market out there or the market that you're ultimately going to want to pick. But you should have there should be some level of interest or connection to that market, right? For you to have a sustained focus on that. The third is results. Can you get this market results? Can you get them measurable results? Can you get them, quantifiable results, emotional results, tangible results? Can you make stuff that they actually are interested in that's going to move their business forward? Now, if you have an interest in something and you're getting them results, then that's where passion gets created, right? I give people the analogy all the time, or the story of when I was 4 years old and I was learning how to bike. I had an interest. I wasn't passionate about it. I was like, oh, that looks interesting. Like my brother can bike. I could maybe, if I could bike, I could ride down the street or whatever, have some fun. But I really wasn't passionate about it. But then I started getting results. And all of a sudden I learned how to bike. And then from there, it was like, oh man, I'm getting results for this thing. I have an interest towards it. And then that's where passion develops over time. So if you go into a market and all of a sudden you start getting them results and people come to you and say, hey, Chase, you guys are the experts at this. Oh man, I can't believe you got my friend these crazy results. Right? I heard your talk at, traffic and conversion, and it's just so awesome what you're doing, right? That kind of positive feedback develops a passion that you can then kind of use to gain more traction in a market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's assume we've found the right fit. We're excited. We're heading into our niche. How do you find the fish? How do you find the ponds that the fish live in your niche?
Yeah. So one thing that's important about your target market that you choose is it's really important to use the same or find a market that thinks of themselves in the same way that you do, right? That they think of themselves as a certain type of person. It doesn't have to be like a one size fits all label that this person can only be one thing, right? But they need to at some point in time think of themselves as the way you define that market. And if you get that right, it should mean that people self-organize in various different ways in that market. We call that market infrastructure inside of our program. So market infrastructure could be a lot of things. It could be publishers, right? Blogs, magazines, newsletters, things like that. It could be podcasts. It could be conferences, masterminds, influencers, coaches, consultants, software providers, right? If you just look at like who's already serving this market, do other people serve this market and think of them in the same way that I do? Kind of like what I was saying about the money thing, right? Like if nobody out there thinks of the market in the same way you do, like you're making your life and you're making your marketing have to work 10 times harder than it probably needs to. Because if if you're able to go out there and leverage other people's infrastructure, it's this concept of standing on the shoulders of giants, that you get to go out there and you get to stand on somebody's shoulders, and maybe they've been building their email list for 10 years, right? Maybe they've been building their subscribership for 20 years. Maybe they're an association that's been around for decades, right? You get to come in, and with a little bit of energy, of time or money, you get to take advantage of or leverage these types of resources for your business, right? So once you've identified your target market, as long as you go out there and you should be able to Google very specific terms, right? Like your niche space blogs, your niche space associations, your niche space conferences, your niche space events, meetups, coaches, consultants, influencers, and then another Google search I like to do is how to grow a blank, right? Or how to start a blank. So, if you're going after asbestos removal companies, right? Like, how do they think of themselves? Are they asbestos removal companies, or are they, hazardous waste mitigation, right? I mean, like, how does the market understand that thing? And once you've teed in on that and you find infrastructure, then what we do in our program is we help you build out a market map, where you literally like map out the market, and then that becomes a list that you work on, build relationships with people, invest in attending conferences or sponsorships, building content. And ultimately, once you learn a market really well, we usually encourage people to eventually transition into some type of paid advertising, because it's so scalable and it takes money, not time. So what happens is when every agency out there, you get busy, what's the first thing you stop doing?
Of course, working on your own business.
Working on your own business, marketing, right?
Yep.
And the beauty of ads is that while you're working on client stuff, while you're out there, at sales appointments and whatnot, they're in the background working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so what happens is once you get a foothold in a market and you start to get some traction and you really know what these people need, ads are really the way to go long-term in terms of scalable marketing.
That's so funny that you just said all that, because do you remember Rand Fishkin from Moz?
Sure. Yeah.
Did you know his new thing he's been building, Spark Toro, it's called?
I'm not familiar with it now.
I put in my email for a beta invite, like, I don't know, a year ago or something. And I just got the email this morning that says like, hey, sorry it took so long, but you're in. Your first 10 searches are on the house. And the tool that they built the idea is that it shortcuts what you just said. So if I say like, I'm looking for dentists, what podcasts do they listen to? And it spits out a list of the most popular podcasts that dentists listen to. And you can do all blogs. Show me the blogs that dentists read. And it's like a tool built to do exactly what you're saying. And so that's super interesting. And I have no idea if the tool works well or not. I just got the invite this morning. But it could be a cool way to shortcut what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, at least on the research side, right? I mean, so that's one, one component of it, right? So you've got to have a strategy in terms of once you've got your market, right? Strategy is the first thing. So let's say, for instance, you're like, all right, my strategy is I'm going to use stages to get my message in front of my ideal audience, right? Talk about the top problems that my market has to attract them to my agency. Great, that's your strategy, right? The second step is your list, right? So it sounds like Spark Toro, right, is kind of like a tool that you could use to build your list faster, which is awesome, right? The third part is some type of repetition towards that list, right? And this is where people fall flat on their face, right? Is they've got this list, they've got podcasts, they've got whatever, and they think that the way to do this is they just contact these people, they send an email, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're going to get on these podcasts and we're going to get clients, all this kind of stuff. And most often what happens is they get crickets. Nobody replies to them. They get rejected, right? And all of a sudden they're getting demoralized. This is, I'm not good enough for this, or this is never going to work for me. And that's the hard part, right? Is over, really working to make sure that you can, that you've got the tolerance for rejection, and to know that when you're first getting into a market and you're getting traction in that market, you're going to get rejected more often than not, right? When we first launched our agency blog, we pitched our content to 26 publishers. We got one yes, and we probably had to pitch ourselves multiple times to those 26 publishers. We got one yes. It's like, oh man, right? We published with them, went back to those 26, right? Or those 25 that had said no. And we said, hey, guess what? We just got published here, right? And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Got one more yes out of 25. Okay, cool, right? Got our second blog post published, right? Started publishing the second and third post of those first two publishers, went back to those 24 that were still saying no, right? And most of them still, again, said no, right? That third publisher finally said yes to us. We had an article that went viral on that third one. It was probably our fifth or sixth article that we had published in the niche. It went viral. And then like that was the click for us, was all of a sudden we had established market authority, and we got invites for a bunch of different podcasts, went back to those other 23 publishers, and now we were getting like thumbs up. Basically, if they published us content, we were pretty much a surefire contributor to their network, right? And same thing, like I've done a podcast tour. I had over 100 podcasts on my list, right? I had got like 5 yeses, right? And then it was like 10 yeses, right? And now we've been on over, I think, 30 or 40 different podcasts, right? So that's one of the most hard and difficult things, is just dealing with the amount of rejection that you're going to get in a market, and being persistent over time.
But that's the goal, right? And we talk about this a lot on the show, is the first one is so hard, and you have to have the thick skin, you have to keep going. But once you get the one, then you can sort of make your micro case study and go back to the list again and be like, look, so-and-so had me on their show, or look, I delivered these results for this one dentist. Would you like those too? And then it's so much easier every other time, right? You're way more likely once you have the first one under your belt. And I love the idea of podcasts, to be honest, because I think in every niche, there's some business owner trying to be the number one podcast in that. and they need people to talk to. So I think
Yeah, I mean
that's
it's the weekly, right? If your show comes out once a week, you need to have 50 in your interview based show. You have to have 52 guests on your podcast in just 1 year,
mhm.
which and it's relentless, right? I mean, and a lot of people think, okay, I've got some people I could have on my show. Maybe you think of a dozen names, maybe 24 names. 52 is actually a lot of people, and so I think any content creator has that same problem in that they have a constant need for content. I
Mhm.
know at least for our show, we have a very lengthy list of people that have applied to be on our show, and uh, and every once in a while, right, when our organic or our strategic guests like don't line up with our schedule, we go to that list and we'll go like all last minute. We'll be like, hey, we've got a spot that's opened up for you,
Yeah.
right? Like we need to publish an episode like next week, and we're like crunched for time. Can you make this spot work, right? So sometimes it's just being like both making yourself front of mind to these influencers and these folks in the market, but also being persistent and focusing first and foremost on the relationship component of,
Mhm.
hey, we both serve the same market, and how do we build a relationship without that, without that kind of that assumption that they're going to have you on your show right now. But
Mhm.
maybe if you're persistent, you stay front of mind, you'll get on there. One of my clients, if I can give you a quick example,
Sure.
his market is registered investment advisors. When we first focused on that niche, I mean, people just wouldn't give him the time of day, right? And we identify, like we had on the market map who his top influencers were, who the people were in this market that were going to move the needle for him. And I said, hey, reach out to them, right? Reach out to them with the sole purpose of getting rejected, right? Hey,
Right.
I want you to get rejected from them because that's going to start the process, right? Because they're all going to reject everybody like that first time. So let's get that process started. Let's get that rejection letter in, right? And he's like, what? Like, you gotta be kidding me. You're literally having me. Because what he wanted to do was he wanted to wait until he was quote unquote big enough. And I'm like, well, you're never going to be big enough. You need to get
Yeah.
rejected at least a couple of times by these people. And then what's going to happen is they're going to see you out there at some point in time, or you're going to have a little bit more market credibility. And then we're going to leverage that later to come back to these people again, right? So that they know, hey, I have already rejected this person. They've been persistent with this market. They didn't just show up one day as kind of a market tourist and
Mhm.
think like, oh, hey, I want to get on your blog. They're being consistent and persistent. We call this the concept of owning your market, right? Going in and buying a residence there, kind of like you would a house, right? You start to
Mm.
care about your neighbors and your community. So when somebody in a market sees that you're in that space, you didn't just pop in, look for a quick marketing hit, and you're leaving. You're actually trying
I'm
to
not
help people in
going
that market.
anywhere.
Yeah, like I'm not going anywhere, right? So like we try to get those rejection letters as fast as possible, so that in 3 or 6 months, right, then you're out there more readily, and then you can come back to them. So what's recently happened to him, he had another publisher in the market. I think it's called Advisor Perspectives or something like that. Published a couple of his articles. They came back to him asking if he wanted to be a part of a large survey research project with Advisor Perspectives around marketing for registered investment advisors. He participated with them. They created an ebook. And at some point, Advisor Perspectives tapped this influencer to get
Mhm.
involved in the project. And so all of a sudden now he's got this third party that's connecting the two of them. Now they forge a relationship. Hey, Chris, I
Right.
remember when you reached out to me, man. We were really busy then, but you wouldn't believe it. We've got some opening spots on our podcast coming up here, right? So now they're a year into his market. They're doing some really cool marketing initiatives together. They're crushing it. He's getting so many leads. It's unbelievable, right? Because he looked at that as, hey, I need to own this market. I need to set up residence. I need to really commit over a long period of time.
So talk to me about systematizing. Like, okay, that's a great idea. We just talked about like, getting on podcasts in your niche as a good way to prospect or when you're getting started. But I think one of the big things that I saw that uGurus can bring to you is structure, right? And structure by people who have done it before you. So it's not like you're trying to invent this wheel on the fly, but like, how do you build a system to make sure you're always getting leads? Podcasting is just one idea, right? But you really want to have a system set up that's pursuing lots of avenues every month, right? So talk to me about what uGuru brings as far as structure.
Yeah. So you said something that I just want to key into our listeners. Lots of avenues to get clients. I'm not 100% sold on that. I think you need to have
Okay.
maybe two or three what I call marketing engines for your business to be successful. The first thing you should be doing is trying to create one marketing engine that's not referrals and word of mouth, right? So
Okay.
every agency that's doing work that has a client list is probably actively getting some referrals and word of mouth. That's awesome, right? It means you're doing good work, you're taking care of your clients, you're building relationships, you're getting them results,
Mhm.
and they're referring you and staying with you as a client. What you want to do next is build yourself a proven marketing engine. So I look at marketing engines as a system from traffic all the way through conversation, right? Where you've
Mhm.
got a traffic source, you have some fuel that you put into that traffic source, time or money, in order to build awareness. And once you have an awareness event, that awareness drives into some type of conversion. I call it a conversion driver. So it could be
Mhm.
opting into an email list, could be taking advantage of a free strategy session, right? There's some kind of offer for
Yeah.
value to drive towards a conversation. Okay. So that's the basics of a marketing engine. When you go out into a market and you're trying to find your first marketing engine, I kind of look at this as each marketing engine's in 5 stages. The first is exploration, right?
Okay.
So you just mentioned like podcasts. Okay. So let's say you're an agency and you're like, okay, I think my strategy is podcasts. Great. You need to go explore that avenue. You need to invest some time and money into getting on a few podcasts and see if you can actually get a lead, or better yet, a client from that, right? So you
Mhm.
start an exploration. The second level of a marketing engine is proven. So let's say, for instance, you go out there, get on a podcast, generates a lead, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. This is a proven engine, right? Like it actually generated me some results, right? Um, the next layer, though, is it repeatable? Okay.
Mm.
Can I go get on another podcast and get a lead, right? Can I make some tweaks to my offer, my content, and get more leads, right? Could I get 2 or 3 leads instead of 1 lead, right? So
Mhm.
is this something that is repeatable? Okay. After that becomes predictable. Okay. Once you have your podcasting strategy down to a science, it's like, hey, I can go and get on a podcast. I can get on a podcast a month. And every time I'm on a podcast, I get a lead, right? So then we went from exploration to proven to repeatable. Now we're at predictable, right? So if you can literally say, every month I just need to be on a podcast and I'm going to get a lead, podcast lead. Notice how I'm not saying Instagram, Facebook, all these other things. It's podcast lead, right? Now you have to
Mhm.
make sure that there's enough market infrastructure out there for you to be able to work something like this. The final and fifth stage is scalable. Okay,
Mhm.
so is this marketing engine scalable with money or time? So let's say, for instance, how many podcasts are there? Can you doing one podcast a month? What happens when you do 2 podcasts a month? Can you do 3 podcasts a month, right? Can you do 4 podcasts a month, right? Is this thing scalable? So some organic channels like podcasts can be hard because a lot of hosts only want to have you on
Yeah.
maybe once a year. But even then, right, you find 52 podcasts and you can be on a podcast every week, right? Uh, Publishing, depending on how many publishers there are on your market, sometimes can be more scalable because even 4 to 5 publishers publishing you once a month ends up being about 1 or 2 hits a month. But scalable is something that's really important. So what we typically see happen is our clients will start off with content-based marketing engines like podcasts or publishers. As they get traction in a niche, they eventually find themselves at ads, because ads are typically one of the most scalable engines out
Yeah.
there. And I tell this to my guys around advertising, right? Like, let's say you're spending $500 a month and you're getting 1 lead a month. Is it scalable? What happens when we go from 500 a month to 1,000? Do we get 2
Do you get
leads?
two?
1,000 to 2,000? Do we get 4 leads? 2,000,
Yeah.
and so on, right? And I tell the example, I said, at one point we were spending $50,000 a month advertising for uGurus. And people are like, oh my gosh, I can never imagine how do you get to 50K a month? And I'm like, yeah, you just you start off at 500, 1,000 and 2,000. And several months later, a couple of years later, before you know it, you're spending, mid 5 figures on advertising because you're getting the results and the engine has scaled.
Yeah, so that's sort of what we're in our agency snapshot. We have these snapshots in the high level software that's basically like a template, and we have a bunch per industry specific ones, and we have one for marketing agencies, and in it is a survey, and the idea is that you could run an ad that's basically giving away a free marketing audit run it to whatever, the businesses in your area or the business in your niche, get them to claim that, answer some questions, then you come back and deliver results, which is great if you have money to spend on ads, right? And so I think that's what you said, you sort of work up to that. But if you can prove it, right? If you get an ad and you're like, every time I run this thing and I put at least $50 in, I get somebody to book with me. Well, if you can prove that over and over, like you said, now that's scalable. If I double the money, I should be able to predict double the results, right?
And Chase, for the record, if you're booking appointments for $50, dude, like virtual high five, and you just scale the heck out of that campaign, right? But the reality is, expectations around ad spend are usually wildly mismatched, right? Is that people think they can go to these channels, they can spend $50 and they can get leads, and they get upset when they, or have spent $500 or $1,000 in ads and they haven't gotten results. The reality is, if you're an agency out there and you're trying to sign clients for $10,000, or you're trying to sign clients for retainers of $2,000 a month, I mean, that's a $24,000 client over the course of 12 months if you can get your client results and they stay as a client. You have to set your expectations to a realistic investment and expectation on ROI. So, how much are you willing to spend for a client that's going to spend $20,000 a year with you? I mean, gosh, man, like, I know what I'd probably spend. Like, I'd probably be willing to spend $3,000 or $4,000, right? And if there's advertisers out there like me that are willing to spend that kind of money, here's the deal. We're going to outbid you. We're going to outperform you, not because your ads are bad or that you haven't written good copy or you don't have a brilliant landing page, but just because I'm willing to outspend you 5 to 1 or 10 to 1 is going to get me all the results, and you're going to be like, why aren't ads working for me, right? So you really have to think hard about, what's a client worth to me and what am I willing to bet in order to see if I get results.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was obviously just trying to keep the math easy for our example here, but that's a fantastic point. I mean, people do go into it and they're like, yeah, I tried Facebook ads. How much did you spend? I put $500 into it. Didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I do. We spent $500 a month for 8 months before we got our first client. And one of my mentors came to me and said, hey, Brent, like, this is great, right? You guys have dipped your toe in, but do you want to spend another 8 months learning? That's a long time, right? Why don't we spend $20,000 in 2 weeks, and you're going to learn like 3 years worth of, you get 3 years of advertising experience in 2 weeks. And then from there, like, we can do some interesting things. And I was just like, just wrapping my head around that concept of, wow, okay, you want me to do this in 2 weeks? The reality was, I mean, we had to go find that money. We need to make that happen. But we went in and started playing big on the bets, and we learned so fast what was working and what wasn't working that we were then able to create a scalable marketing engine much more effectively.
Interesting. So we talked a lot about, a young agency just getting started, and we talk about that a lot on the show, to be honest. And what I'm excited to talk to you about is, let's fast forward 2, 3, 4 years, right? I've had my agency going, and I feel like I'm stagnant, right? I've hit this sort of plateau. It's the same cycle year after year. I'm getting clients between, let's say, $1,000 and maybe $2,000 a month. I have some great stretches, and then I have some down stretches. The one thing that I remember from attending your uGurus event a few years ago was everybody around me was talking about projects like $10,000, $20-something thousand. And I was like looking around going, you guys are selling $20,000 websites regularly? And they're like, yeah, that's what this program helped us do. Like, well, you have a bootcamp called 10K, right? The idea of that is to get your project price up to 10K. How do you do that? Is it a mindset thing? Is it a support thing? How do you go from $2,000 projects to $10,000 projects?
Yeah, good question, Chase. So I mean, look, is it a mindset thing? Absolutely. I've been in situations where clients of mine are delivering proposals to their clients for, $9,970, right? Because they just can't. They're like, oh, this client doesn't have more than $10,000 for a budget. I'm like, they don't have more than 10K, or like, you just feel scared to add that one and whatever. So there's definitely a mindset thing around your value and around what you're worth, that if you don't believe it, right? If you don't believe that your work can get those kind of results, your clients never will. And so that's important, right? You also have to think about this in terms of, what your clients care about and what does value mean to them, right? Like, for instance, if I told you right now, hey, Chase, can you give me, if you give me $10, I'm going to give you $100. So you give me a $10 bill and I'm going to give you $100 right now. Like we'll pull out our phones. You Venmo me 10 and I'll Venmo you $100, right? Like honest to God, here's my list of testimonials. Here's my certification that says I don't screw people. Here's my Better Business, logo, right? Like, would you take me up on that?
Of course.
How confident do you think I'd be in making that offer?
I would hope that you'd be 100%, right?
Yeah, I'd be insanely confident, right? So the question is, what's that offer for you and your clients, right? And so we call this finding $100,000 problems. You go into your client's business and you find $100,000 problem that could get them, $100,000 in ROI, could get them, it could be a quantifiable result, a tangible result, an emotional result. Like, what's the value of your client being more confident in their business, right? I mean, that's big too. So if you find $100,000 problem, and it doesn't have to be like 100K in the next 2 weeks. Like if you can just paint a picture of, hey, we're going to help you with this workflow in your business. It's going to save you this much time, help you get this much more money over this next 12 months. Here's what it looks like over the next 3 to 5 years. Just this one little piece is probably going to save you or help make you over $100,000 in the next few years. And to do this project is going to be $10,000, 3 monthly payments of $3,400 or whatever, right? Okay, right? Like that's a much different conversation than let me build you this website. And so you have to find that value. You have to speak the language that your clients care about. And that's really like when we talk about the mindset, you have to go into discovery looking for those types of valuable problems to solve. And if your client's just saying, hey, build me a website with 10 pages and, blah, 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 right? Then you're all about the commodity, right? It's just, it's the pages, it's the design, it's the CMS or whatever. But if you can bridge that gap and really learn a client's business and look for those problems and build a track record of being a consultant, then I think what happens is you find yourself in more of those situations where you're like, hey, pay me 10K. I'm going to help unlock 100K. And that becomes a really fun pitch. And people say, well, how do I get a 50K project? And I'm like, well, go in and find $500,000 of value. And it's really easy. Maybe you can't find $500,000. Maybe you can find 300K. But hey, 300K in value for 50K. I mean, that's a attractive value proposition for a lot of businesses out there in this competitive marketplace.
To me, I think that illustrates the power of joining a community like uGurus, because my first thought is, how do I know what to look for? Like, how do I know, you know what I mean? And when you're surrounded by people that have already done it, you're like, oh, you're in what industry? Oh, they really need this, this, and this, and they never know they need it. And like that kind of stuff, it's like, oh, it's eye-opening almost. Of things you never even, because if all you do is build websites, how do I even know what does a $50,000 problem look like? You know what I mean? So I think that
it could be as simple as one of the clients we worked with was a nonprofit association, and they were a pretty big organization, but they did a lot of event registration, and they were doing all of their event registration through paper forms. They had a couple of kind of janky online order forms, but like they had to do phone support a lot of the time to help people through the process. So we just looked at that as a problem. We said, look, how much time is it taking your organization to process this type of stuff? What are you guys having to do in terms of like mailing out confirmations? I was like, screw that. Like, let's email people stuff. Let's send them text messages. Let's cut that mail cost out of the equation, right? And so here you have this multi-million-dollar, state nonprofit association that's supporting school boards in Colorado. And we went through and completely overhauled their event management system. And it was probably around that $50,000 price tag to do this. And it was super profitable for us. And the client loved it because so many people in their organization were like hating what they were doing because it wasn't efficient. There were so many opportunities to make the workflows more improved, help their members do this type of stuff faster, like helping them save their billing details and just little things like that to make it to where they could come in and register for a conference in like 3 clicks versus taking a half an hour before, right? And so looking at something like that, as simple as event registration, it wasn't even their whole website. It was just this one component of it. We got paid really well for that, showed that we could deliver results. Then they brought us in to work on a ton of other areas of their business.
That's a great point, especially daily processes. There are a lot, I feel like pretty much every business that's been running for 15, 10, 20 years, if you look and say, show me what you do every day and how you do it, there's almost always an opportunity to modernize that, make it more efficient, and that delivers that emotional result you're talking about of like, you just changed my life. You just saved me 10 hours a week, like that kind of stuff. is obviously really valuable. So the one other thing I wanted to talk about, which I thought was really cool, which is like I saw a video of two guys, it was a testimonial on your site, and I think they build websites in San Diego or something. And right after they went through the boot camp, they were like, dude, we just like you guys gave us this like I don't know how many phases were in the script or the playbook or whatever. And they're like, we literally just it was like call one, here's what we're gonna do. Okay, great, we're having call one. It worked. What do we do on the next call? Like, okay, we're figuring out like here we did it and it worked. So talk to me about that. The stuff that you guys have generated over the years that's tried and true and what that can do for an agency.
Yes. So that method is called the build the plane while you're flying it approach, right? Because what a lot of people like to do is they like to try to quote unquote get their ducks in a row, and they like to try to like learn an entire massive process versus taking action on like that very first step. Like let's just get a business to book a first call with us. Like that's the first hurdle. That until we get that hurdle, we get over that hurdle. Really learning the rest of the process doesn't really matter, right? And so we really look at all of the systems in an agency, whether it's your marketing systems, whether it's your sales systems, whether it's your fulfillment systems, or how you're scaling your business. We look at it in that lens. We would like to see action, and we like to see it in a very kind of step-by-step approach where we really just focus on that one piece, right? Okay, cool. You've got people booking that first call with you. Great. Let's focus on just that first call, because then we get to put all of our energy into a smaller amount of work. You get to go out there and try some stuff in the field, get results, and then you have a lot more context for the rest of the process versus, let's hammer this, 14-part process into your head. And then once you've memorized everything, then you can go out there in the market and try this stuff on. So we love to see people take quick action within like the first week of learning something. They go out there, they get to see how something feels different for themselves in that market. They get that feedback, right? They get those early results, and then we kind of focus on that next thing. So, in the sales process, we would maybe break up a sales interaction from, one meeting into, depending on the size of the client and the size of the project, anywhere from 3 to 7 or even more meetings during the sales process, because different projects take different amount of time. I mean, we have clients that do 20 interactions in their sales process, and you're like, that's insane. Why would I ever spend 20, have 20 meetings with a client before, signing onto a big project? And it's like, well, because they just want a $500,000 project, right? And so guess what? We had to do a lot of meetings. We had to do a lot of due diligence, a lot of discovery, a lot of road mapping, a lot of strategy. And so it really depends on the size of projects that you're going after. So we've got sales processes for projects that are in that kind of 10K range, the 50K range, and 6-figure plus.
And you guys have somebody on the support side? Because that makes me nervous. Like, okay, I'm going to build a plane while I'm flying it. Like, I got them on the call. The call went well, great. Like, do I have somebody to call right away and be like, what do I do next?
Yeah,
like
so
that would be my main concern.
So all of our clients are in small groups, and they have a dedicated mentor assigned to them. And then we also have something new that we've done the last year or so is on-demand 20-minute calls with our mentor team. So we have those on a round robin. So you're always like maybe a day away from booking a 20 with one of our mentors if you need it. We've got our clients all on Slack and direct messenger and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, like when stuff comes up and they're in that situation of, hey, I need this resource, whatever, like, they're always a phone call, a message away from getting the support they need on the next thing. Like we don't have we have a portal that has lots of courses and tools and all that kind of stuff in there. But really the thing that we bring to the table is that kind of customized, focused, just-in-time learning that only somebody that's a trained mentor or coach could really deliver. I mean, at this point, when we first launched boot camp, we had like one 10-week program, right? We have like hundreds of very specific courses now available. And so really for us, it's like, okay, cool. You've got this problem. Like, here's the training for you. Here's the tool stack for you. Great. Go out there and go through this. Then let's jump on a one-on-one call, make sure that you understand it. Let's go have you implement it. Then let's get some feedback after you've done that.
So, I mean, your testimonial page is insane. It just keeps loading and loading and loading. So obviously I think, and having been at one of your events, I can wholeheartedly recommend the program. Where do people go? If they like what they're hearing, where should they go to get started?
Yeah, so you can, of course, check out our website, uGurus.com. Feel free to also shoot me an email, Brent@uGurus.com. We've got a couple of courses that we sell for $200 on our website, our sales kit, as well as another course called More Deals, Higher Prices to help you get your first 30 leads. So if you're interested in the sales course or the leads course, just shoot me an email, Brent@uGurus.com. Happy to give those to you for free. And I can even hook you up with our strategist team to do a quick intro call to see kind of what we're all about and how we can help you further.
Do you guys have an event this year coming up?
We will have probably a couple of different events. So yeah, if you are interested in learning more about our events, just let me know. We don't have a date yet for U Summit. This will be the 8th year that we've run that event, the 8th time. And so we are in hotel negotiations for that right now. If you can imagine, it's kind of a weird time of year, time of
Yeah.
society to be booking large scale events. So we're just kind of taking that a day at a time. But usually our event is in the fall, and we're planning on continuing forward with that.
And we'll be in Denver again?
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
97% sure it will be in Denver. But yeah, most likely. There'll be like a small chance. We have done events in other cities before, but most likely Denver.
All right, awesome. Well, we'll have to talk about how we can get high level involved because the last one I went to was a good time.
Awesome.
Thanks again for joining us, Brent. Check out uGurus.com, and we'll see everybody else in the next episode.